Why do Japanese runners, often overlooked on the world stage, consistently pump out marathoners that grind harder, train smarter, and run with a discipline most of us can only dream of? Today we're diving deep into the Japanese running philosophy and how one runner, Jake, aka Ran to Japan, used it to level up his marathon game to an elite level. Stick around because this might just change how you train. Japan has over 1,000 sub-2:30 marathoners, more than any country in the world. But there's one British runner, Jake Barraclough, who saw something in their method. He studied it, applied it, and saw serious gains from it. What's the secret, you may ask? Well, let's break it down. But first of all, I need to do my easy run with a few strides because I've got a 3K track race this upcoming Sunday, and therefore I need to just do a little bit of a shakeout run. So let's go. Now, yes guys, before you ask, I have just had a shower, so my hair is pretty wet. But anyway, I'm gonna just speak to you a little bit about the Japanese ekiden and high school running, so let's go. So to understand Japanese success, you've got to look at the ekiden. Long distance team relays that are basically a national obsession. So for example, like in England, you have like football, like the Premier League, which is super famous. And then for Japan, sorry, I was about to say that wrong. It is the ekiden, the team relays. So hopefully that puts it into perspective how big the ekiden is in Japan. Anyway, from a young age, Japanese runners are immersed in a culture of discipline and particularly consistency because coaches emphasize, the high and particularly consistency because coaches emphasize running lots of high volume but also with lots of quality. For example, double runs, hill workouts, track workouts, and that will, give a massive aerobic base to their training. So now here's what really sets Japanese training apart. High mileage, low ego. They run between 200 and 300 kilometers per week, and if you saw Ran to Japan's latest video, he even did a 322k week, so I guess that's pretty big volume. But anyway, that is definitely not rare for the Japanese style of training, but also it's not about crushing every run. You need to do your easies and your hard running as well, but it's probably about just stacking that volume patiently and just seeing those results. And then what, another really big factor is the group mentality. If you go on the internet, they're always training in packs and pulling each other along. And personally, when I do train with my running club, I just completely can get a lot more out of myself. Whereas if I went training on my own, I wouldn't have been able to get half as much out of myself and get as much quality and running at a less high intensity as well. Guys, could you just quickly help me out by just subscribing to this video if you are really enjoying it at the moment so you can get more content like this. Back to the video. And you know what, another thing I really like about the Japanese style of training is just the simplicity. They stick to the basics, lots of steady state, marathon pace efforts, hills. And if you look at all these Western styles of training, I personally find it's so complicated. For example, on a long run, they might do 3K at marathon pace with 0.15 kilometers at 5K pace.
One eternity later.
And then 5K at threshold pace. The list goes on. So Western style of training is complicated, it's fair to say. And also I just find respect for the process is so huge in Japanese training. They definitely treat it with a monk-like respect, you know, just probably having not as much enjoyment, but you know, just being so disciplined and dedicated. And there was one runner, Jake Barraclaw, who saw something in their style of training. So he adopted the marathon monk lifestyle, training 250k to 322k weeks. He also probably saw the potential in the Japanese style, since, you know, they're the third fastest country for marathon running. And I think that's because Japan isn't so talented with their raw speed. However, they're just, with their running philosophy, it's so good. This high mileage, it obviously works because Y has tons and tons of Japanese runners. I mean, it's so dense. How many good runners there are in Japan? How are they so good? Not because of the talent, not because of the raw speed that the Kenyans and the Ethiopians naturally have, but because of their training philosophy that just works so well for them. But you know, it's fair to say that his training has paid off, with the Tokyo Marathon being his best ever marathon run in 2:14. And if you've watched his YouTube channel, he's definitely not got natural raw speed. He's not like naturally talented, but I think, you know, he can just naturally just hold lots of mileage because he's quite durable, I think he says. And I think he's actually signed pro contract with Brooks, which is really good for him. So obviously his aerobic base completely increased and his injury rate decreased. And you may think, well, he's running tons of mileage. Well, he's actually so used to it after stacking 250k a week after 250k a week. So how can you, a park run warrior, a club runner, or an aspiring marathoner, apply these lessons? Well, the first takeaway is respect the base. Build aerobic capacity with consistent, easy mileage. The second tip is think long term. Big gains come from stacking months of disciplined efforts. Number 3, train in groups, because you can just get pulled along and pushed along and run so much faster. Simplicity wins. Threshold runs, long runs, hills, just repeat. Number 5, just love the grind. The Japanese runners just love grinding it out day after day. Jake's story is proof. Sometimes the best way forward is to run to Japan. The Japanese method may not be flashy, but it works if you're willing to commit. If this inspired you to rethink your training, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments, would you try the Japanese approach? And if Jake is watching, you're a legend. See you in the next one. Bye.